We get to spend some quality time with our featured artist for Nikkei Matsuri 2021. As I said before, her name is Naomi Takata Shepherd. She's the owner. She operates 6 Degrees of Hapa. You might recognize that from festivals past. It's the one with the really cute baseball cap with the Spam Musubi logo on it. She has a ton of different products, but I love the stickers. I absolutely love the Star Wars ones, and she'll have those stickers on display in her video. I just thought I'd point them out to you. Also, what she'll do in this video is explain her art process, because right here is the 3 Koi Nobori logo for our Nikkei Matsuri this year. It's also on our flyers, been on those posters, and you see it on the Matsuri merchandise portion of our website. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider becoming a 6 Degrees of Hapa shoppa. And we'll move on to just mentioning the fact that you can also do business with the rest of our artisans, again, on the Matsuri merchandise portion of NikkeiMatsuri.org. All right, without any other dad jokes, we'll hand it off to the true artist. Take it away, Naomi.
Hi everyone, I'm Naomi Takata Shepherd, and I'm this year's guest artist for Nikkei Matsuri. So today I wanted to show you a little bit about how I do my art and design process. And so I designed the 3 koi for this year's festival, and so I wanted to show you what I started out with for reference. So this is a sketch that I did a while back for my first edition of my Koi no Bori design. And so I've used my koi before for my own business, 6 Degrees of Hapa, and I created a whole new edition for Nikkei Matsuri. So I usually take this art and I use this for just a visual reference, and I don't scan it or anything. I just go ahead and create a new version using vector art in Adobe Illustrator. So I wanted to show you guys a little bit about my detail work in Adobe Illustrator. And I started a little koi design here, and from this art we'll go ahead and take a look at how I do all my fine details and shapes and everything in Illustrator. Okay, so here we are in my art file, and so I'm going to show you how I created my Koi no Bori design. And I've already got a little bit of it set up for you, just because if I did the whole thing from scratch it would take a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Daruma eyeball here, and my Daruma is a design I like to use a lot. I use a lot of elements from this design and other designs. So this eyeball's been featured actually in my Koi no Bori, and then also in my goldfish design from a few years ago too. So I'm going to take this design and place it on my koi. And as you can see, the colors aren't quite right yet, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Okay, so there's my eye, and for this design I like the eye a little oversized, just because it makes the koi a little cuter, or at least I think so, compared to if I did something like this. It sort of just changes the look of the design, and I don't really like it as much. Alright, so here's my koi, and we've got the face mostly complete. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to finish the mouth detail here. So with Adobe Illustrator, I'm self-taught in it, so the way I handle some things isn't probably the traditional professional way you see things being handled, but I taught myself over years and I'm still learning. But I think I've gotten pretty proficient in it. I can do a lot of things with the program, and I feel like I can get what I want to do done, and that's the most important. And for me, like, using Adobe Illustrator is just one tool in my art toolkit. So as I showed you guys just a few seconds ago, I also hand draw things, and sometimes those actually become my final design too. So I've got my mouth detail here the way I want it. So this is sort of to create the, I guess, windsock effect, to give the koi a little bit more of a curve to his mouth and evoke the sense that there's probably wind blowing through the kite part of the fish, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've got that done, and then I'm gonna go ahead and create, let's see, what am I gonna do? Okay, I'm gonna show you guys also, I use a little bit of my Daruma's beard to make some of the little fish details on the face. So these aren't the right color either, so I'll go ahead and make them white. And I think I want to add one more to it. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna change the size of these just a little to give them more depth. Okay, there we go. And the reason why I like to reuse shapes, and specifically like different parts like the eyeball from the Daruma, or like these little shapes here, I like to reuse these things in my designs because I feel like it gives my art a sense of continuity across designs, and it helps me create a theme throughout my design. So like my plumeria ends up being used a lot, and I've used these waves a lot as well. And this was actually one of my best sort of creations for making things that I would reuse in the future. So like the plumeria actually comes from one of my very first designs that I made into a t-shirt, which is just a little plumeria trail across a shirt. But I've reused those, and then a lot of these design elements are new for Daruma specifically, and then from there I've reused them over the years. And my cherry blossoms are something I created a while back as well. And this is actually a fabric tile that I made. It's a repeating pattern, so if you take this and put them next to each other, eventually it'll form a repeating pattern. So I created the repeating patterns because I got really into making my own fabric and doing some sewing with it. So I created like infinity scarves and a bunch of different stuff out of that as well. So I'm going to use the cherry blossoms here because I felt like with Nikkei Matsuri, I really was excited about, you know, it being a spring show. Like, I love spring. I'm born in the springtime, so I've always thought of it as like one of my seasons, I guess. And I feel like cherry blossoms really evoke that festive sense of the springtime festivals. So I'm going to put a few cherry blossoms in here just to get a feel for what I want to do. And I like to use different cherry blossoms. Like, I don't use, like, if you notice, these aren't symmetrical, and that's on purpose. Like, I don't want any of my designs looking too symmetrical, just because I like having a more organic look to my designs. But on the other hand too, I do like reusing shapes and imagery, as I said before, and then I also like reflecting and rotating and sort of finding ways to make something that is almost symmetrical work. without being too boring. And so I use my brush tool a lot to help me start on a shape. So as you can see, this isn't like the best shape ever, but from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to sculpt the shape, is sort of how I think of it. I think of using Adobe Illustrator as a combination of drawing and sculpting and pattern design. But I think of it as sculpting because you use Adobe Illustrator is like a vector art program. So these little points here are the vectors. And then they all have these little anchors. And these anchors are how you manipulate the lines to create shapes you want. And they take a lot of practice. I've done a few different like tutoring classes with kids who want to learn Adobe Illustrator, and I think working with the anchors is one of the most challenging parts because, you know, instinctually you're like, oh, I just want to get in here and just start drawing. But so much of getting the final shapes you want has to do with how you manipulate these anchor points. And, you know, I'm sure some people who have taken more like professional programs for Adobe Illustrator are probably cringing, but, you know, this is just how I do it, and it gets what I want to do done. Oops. And I feel like, too, if, you know, everybody's taught the exact same way to do something, there's a good chance things are going to come out looking pretty similar. So, I mean, I sort of like that I have a specific approach to the program. And also, it's like I'm coming at this not just from a graphic design standpoint, I'm coming at it from more of a combination of like illustration, like hand-drawn illustration, and then also the different art backgrounds I've picked up over the years too. And also, like, a lot of my designs I really work hard on making screen print friendly because I create so many t-shirt designs, and that's really something I wanted to keep in mind too with this specific Nikkei pattern, because this is going to become, or it has become, like the t-shirts you're welcome to pre-order and things like that as well. All right, so this tail's sort of on the right track. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. But as you can tell, it takes a lot of tweaking and really just getting in there and being patient with the process. So each of my designs end up taking hours to make. All right, so I've got a tail that I'm pretty happy with. And now for these cherry blossoms, I'm just gonna group them all so they can't really go anywhere. And then I'm gonna pick one petal I like the look of. I think this one. And I'm gonna save this over here for one of my final details. Okay, so now I'm gonna get into my cherry blossoms. So obviously, or well, not obviously, but what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna keep these pink. I wanna put them, or I'm gonna arrange them, and I'm also gonna change their colors to match with the theme I have for this year's design. So I went with purple, and then, well, my two main colors are purple and red, and So this design just ends up having a few little like red accents. And for me, like this part may take the longest because I want to make sure I am like layering the cherry blossoms in a way that I'm happy with and that sort of work with the design. And one thing that's always a pain, but I've finally figured out a way to handle is like what to do about this little overlap here. So hopefully I'll be able to show you guys how I handle that. If not, you know, we'll see how it goes, just from a time perspective. Okay, so I've got this, and here's sort of the, there we go. But yeah, I think like for me, one of the most fun things about working with any art is just trying to come up with ways to make it even better and make it really pop. So for me, you know, trying to create a pattern that really brings a smile to people's faces is really important to me. And for this pattern especially, when I figured out the moment which I'm going to show you in a second, where I was like, oh, I need to add this one last element, and this is going to make this design even better. Those are sort of moments that really are fun for me. Let's see. This guy can get pretty big. Okay, so here's pretty much the way I want it. Don't take my word for that. I'll probably go back and dork around with things some more. But here's my basic cherry blossom arrangement. And so now I'm going to add the element I was just talking about. So at this point I was like, this is cool, but it's also looking a little flat to me. And I knew I was going to add red to the design, but I wasn't quite sure how yet. And that's when it hit me that I could go in here and start adding a couple extra cherry blossom accents in red. And I hope you guys are excited about, or as excited about this little like design decision as I am, but probably not because I'm really nerdy about this type of stuff. But yeah, let's see, okay. I added these guys in and I think it made the whole design really pop. Like it just felt more 3D to me, if that makes sense. Okay, and here we go. So something like that. Okay, and then here's the challenging part. I'm gonna try to bisect these ones that are hanging off of the pattern. And we'll see if I can do this in the 2 layers I have. Oh, looks like we might be able to do it. Okay, so I just tried doing divide, which usually works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't quite know the logic of Illustrator sometimes. Oop. Okay, well, this is getting me pretty close to where I want to be with this. And this part I can go ahead and just make black again, and I can go back in and clean that up a little later. But I've got that, and then the last thing I'll do with that part is I'll probably just throw in let's see, I'll throw in a line to divide the petals from the black outline. Sorry guys, this is my first time sort of talking and doing my art at the same time, and it's quite challenging. But here we go. Oops, let's see. Right, and then I'm gonna bump up the thickness of the line. Just to give it enough separation, and then I'm gonna bring, let's see, I'm gonna bring this to the front. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so that, nope. Let's see, maybe I can try sending this backwards. Okay, well, you get the idea, and I'm just gonna leave this here. So this just for your reference will take some more fine tuning and a few different tools to get just the way I want it, but this sort of gives you a good idea of what the end result will look like. I'm reminding myself I don't have to make this the perfect vector file right now, because that always takes a lot of work and comes at the very end anyway. Okay, so then the last component of this design that I'm going to show you is how I basically create a little, almost, I like to evoke scales in the back with the tail area. So I'm going to create a few extra anchor points on here that I can then manipulate to turn into almost like a little scale shape. And the purpose of these is not just to make a little scale shape, but also to separate out the flower from the tail in a way that looks nice. And I want to create a little bit of symmetry here, but first I'm going to just focus on getting these little sort of bubble scale shapes the way I want them. And then I'll go back in and do some final cleanup. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Yeah, not bad. As you can tell, even though I know this is a tutorial, I have a really hard, or not tutorial, but just like a little art demo, I have a really hard time leaving things alone if I don't quite like the way they look. Okay, so this is a pretty good basic tail shape. And here's how the whole pattern looks. Okay, no, I can't handle it. Okay, I'm gonna just do this to make it more symmetrical for now. Without being overly symmetrical. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's my little fishtail shape. And the last thing I'm going to do to sort of give this design its finishing touch is I'm going to add just a few little lines to the tail to give the design some movement. And for this part, I'm going to go ahead and reflect these. So they, oops. I'm going to reflect these so that way they are symmetrical, but then I'm also going to move them around just a little to make them not quite match, because perfect matching isn't my favorite. I want my designs to be organic. Okay, and so here's my koi. And this one is a demo, so the one on the design is going to look a little different and probably more cleaned up. But this is how I got to my final design. So now you've learned a little bit more about my art and design process, and I hope you enjoy this year's Nikkei Matsuri design I've created. And most importantly, I hope you enjoy this year's festival, and please stay safe and healthy, everyone. Take care.